A group of HRD academicians at the University of Michigan want to identify global competencies required for all HR leaders across the globe. The competencies are to be used by leaders, HR leaders across the world to be able to succeed in any country where they work. The government of USA wants to identify the competencies required to be a successful foreign service agent. They want to also answer a question if the tests that they are using are discriminating against certain sections of people they have recruited in the past. The government of Indonesia wants to identify competencies required to be successful managers of the health systems at the state level, at the district level, and at the rural level, with what they call as Puskesmas, which is the primary health center equivalent in India. How should they go about? And they want the competency to map the competencies available with the State Department. The same Ministry of Health in Indonesia wants to identify competencies required to be successful nurse in any setting, whether it is in a hospital setting or in a public health service setting or anywhere. How do you go about doing this? The National HRD Network in India wants to identify competencies required to be a successful HR manager, and also want to evolve a set of certification courses to build these competencies subsequently. How do they go about doing this? A bank in Sri Lanka wants to map the competencies required by various role holders in the entire bank, and they want to do it in 6 months, and they want to continue to have the capability to do this without having to depend on consultants. The American International Assurance in Malaysia and Singapore has been working for last several years, and they observed that some of their sales agents are very successful to be $1 million roundtable holders, whereas a large number of others can't even get the minimum required insurance policies sold. So they want to identify competencies and select the right people so that they can reduce the wastage in selecting insurance sales agents. How do they go about doing this? The government of India wants to identify competencies required by diplomats so that they can post only successful diplomats in the 180 and odd countries where they are working. How do they go about doing this? The Civil Services Commission, the Administrative Reforms Commission of the Civil Services, wants to identify the competencies required to be a successful civil servant, say an IAS officer, IPS officer, or Indian Account Service officer, and so on. How do they go about doing this? I think these are all the kind of questions that we will be discussing today in our session. We'll particularly focus on the survey method. How do you use survey to identify competencies? Behavior event interview. How and when do you use behavior event interview? How and when do you use observation as a method of identifying competencies of people? And when do you use, of course, what we have so far discussed, the role set based competency mapping? And what is the research skills that are required if you want to use any psychometric testing and such other methods required to identify competencies required to be successful in a particular role? So we will essentially discuss expert panel method, survey research method, observation method, and BEI, and other miscellaneous techniques in today's session in the certificate program on competency mapping. Look forward to seeing you, and all the best. Enjoy the session and start thinking about the questions I have posed just now.